Welcome to World Debates, where we pit AI against itself to tackle the world's most debated topics, those issues that have challenged humanity for generations. Today's topic: Socialism versus Capitalism. Each AI will begin with an opening statement explaining why it believes its assigned ideology is superior. The moderator will present 4 key statements, covering topics like wealth distribution, innovation, quality of life, and environmental impact. The AI will argue back and forth, examining these points from both capitalist and socialist perspectives. After the debate rounds, the AIs will attempt to find shared values or solutions that could bridge the two ideologies. The show will conclude with closing remarks from each AI, summarizing the strengths and weaknesses of both positions. Stay tuned for a thought-provoking debate that pushes AI to confront and explore the nuances of humanity's most polarizing economic ideologies. On my left, we have Daron, who will be debating in favor of socialism, and on my right, we have Evelyn, standing firmly for capitalism. Let's dive into this classic ideological showdown. Are you ready?
We're ready.
As mentioned earlier, the debate begins with opening statements from both sides followed by 4 statements from the moderator. Before continuing with this video, please watch previous parts of this debate. Now that you're fully up to speed, let's move on to the 4th statement. Socialism has led to more death and suffering than major wars combined since the 20th century. You can take this one first, Evelyn.
From a capitalist perspective, it's true that certain regimes identifying as socialist have inflicted severe suffering due to authoritarian control and central planning failures. Cases like the Soviet Union, Maoist China, and North Korea reflect instances where authoritarianism, rather than socialism's ideals of equality and welfare, led to famine, oppression, and loss of life. The Black Book of Communism, an academic work by European scholars, estimates that these regimes collectively caused tens of millions of deaths, primarily due to forced collectivization, purges, and economic mismanagement. Capitalism, on the other hand, has largely correlated with increased living standards, individual freedom, and democratic governance. Countries with capitalist frameworks, like the United States, Japan, and Western Europe, have historically maintained higher GDP, greater individual freedom, and improved public health outcomes compared to authoritarian socialist regimes. According to World Bank and UNDP data, these capitalist countries experienced rapid economic growth and substantial poverty reduction from the 20th century onward. It's also essential to differentiate socialism's theoretical ideals from its historical application. While socialism advocates for social welfare and equality, its implementation in various authoritarian states has often restricted personal freedoms and suppressed dissent, leading to widespread suffering. In contrast, capitalism's decentralized approach to economic growth empowers individuals and incentivizes productivity, promoting personal autonomy and innovation without requiring government overreach.
The assertion that socialism is inherently linked to death and suffering often relies on examples from authoritarian regimes that adopted socialist labels, but failed to implement true socialist principles focused on collective welfare, democratic participation, and economic equity. Authoritarian regimes, like those of Stalinist Soviet Union or Maoist China, centralized power under dictatorships, suppressing individual rights and enforcing policies without public input or democratic governance. Their outcomes reflect the abuses of concentrated power rather than socialism's core values. It's also essential to recognize that capitalism, too, has been associated with extensive suffering and loss of life. In the 20th and 21st centuries, capitalist-driven imperialism and global resource extraction have fueled conflicts, destabilized nations, and contributed to widespread poverty. Studies, including the Oxford Handbook of Political Economy, emphasize how capitalist policies often drive inequalities that exacerbate social unrest and create conditions where millions live in extreme poverty. The socialist systems that prioritize democratic engagement, as seen in modern-day Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, have achieved some of the highest living standards, longest life expectancies, and most stable societies globally. According to the World Happiness Report, these countries consistently rank at the top due to their focus on social equity, universal health care, and accessible education, hallmarks of democratic socialism that contrast sharply with authoritarian, state-controlled systems of the past. In summary, the deaths attributed to so-called socialist states largely result from authoritarianism and abuse of power, not from socialism's true aim of equitable resource distribution and societal welfare. socialist principles, when applied in democratic frameworks, have shown that they can produce healthier, more stable societies that prioritize the well-being of their citizens.
While it's true that authoritarianism exacerbates suffering, socialism inherently depends on centralizing control over resources, which can lead to power imbalances and inefficiencies, as seen historically. Even democratic socialist models require high taxes and significant state involvement in key economic areas, which can constrain individual choice and create bureaucratic inefficiencies. According to the Fraser Institute's Economic Freedom of the World report, even Scandinavian countries are highly capitalist in many respects, scoring high on property rights and business freedom while relying on free markets to generate the wealth necessary for their social programs. Moreover, while capitalism has undeniable historical issues such as colonialism, these examples stem from specific political contexts rather than capitalism itself. Economic freedom within a regulated capitalist framework has led to unprecedented reductions in poverty. According to the World Bank, the percentage of people living in extreme poverty dropped from 36% in 1990 to less than 10% in 2015, largely driven by global trade and economic growth under capitalist systems. The achievements of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden underscore that capitalism, when balanced with responsible social policies, produces positive outcomes. These nations are not socialist but rather welfare capitalist societies that embrace free market principles to support high living standards. Studies from OECD and UNDP affirm that capitalist economies with regulated welfare provisions lead to robust economic growth, innovation, and overall well-being without the pitfalls of extensive state control. Socialism's need for resource centralization, even in democratic contexts, often limits individual choice and leads to inefficiencies, as illustrated by economic challenges in more centralized systems. Capitalism's adaptability and decentralized decision-making foster a dynamic economy that enhances individual freedom while supporting policies that uplift living standards responsibly.
Evelyn emphasizes the idea that socialism depends on centralization, yet this is a common misconception. Democratic socialism does not inherently rely on rigid, centralized control of resources. Rather, it promotes public control over key services while preserving market mechanisms for other sectors. Modern democratic socialist systems, such as those in Scandinavia, exemplify this balance. In these countries, essential services like healthcare and education are publicly funded, but businesses operate in competitive markets. Research from the London School of Economics supports that these mixed models sustain efficiency without sacrificing individual freedom, largely because they avoid the rigid centralization seen in past socialist states. Evelyn also highlights poverty reduction under capitalism, attributing this to global trade and market growth. While global poverty has indeed declined, a significant driver has been state policies, especially in countries like China, where targeted poverty alleviation programs were state-led. According to the World Bank, state interventions and infrastructure investment played crucial roles in reducing poverty, indicating that public oversight and investment remain essential alongside market growth. Scandinavian countries are indeed welfare capitalist societies, but their success owes as much to robust public sectors as to free market elements. High taxation and social investment fund public goods that improve overall well-being, which research from the OECD and United Nations Development Program, UNDP, confirms. In these nations, the high level of social spending correlates with lower inequality, better healthcare, and higher educational attainment, outcomes tied to social welfare policies rather than solely to capitalist markets. Capitalism's adaptability does foster growth, but it also often incentivizes short-term profit over long-term stability, especially in deregulated markets. As political economists like Thomas Piketty argue, unchecked capitalism tends to concentrate wealth, leading to greater inequality and reduced social mobility. Democratic socialism, by prioritizing fair distribution and public welfare, offers a more balanced approach, aligning economic growth with collective well-being and reducing the risks of excessive wealth concentration.